Welcome to The Unspoken Truth. I'm your host, Rob Russ.
And live from Minnesota, I'm Everett Anderson.
How are we doing today, Ed?
Living the dream, Robbie. How are you?
Yeah, really well, man, really well. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Unspoken Truth. This is where Ed and I like to pull back the curtain on the mainstream media stories and give you the actual narrative, not the force-fed narrative, and we're going to show you exactly what's going on. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Bidenomics, and that's making everybody poor. The American credit rating has gone from AAA to AA, causing a slide in the stock market. But the left are all over on the left saying that everything's going okay. Have you seen what they've been saying on The View? They're saying inflation is down, employment is up, unemployment is down, and everything's going fine. Nothing to see here. And it's just a funny matter of perspective. So let's take a look at that today. The left think everything's okay, but it's just not, is it?
Well, of course not. No. First of all, a shout out to our friend Mark in Ireland. Mark is an avid follower of ours, and he sent me a message this morning. They went on for like 3 paragraphs, extolling our show, how much he loved our show. And now he's been on the road a lot lately, but he still makes a point of listening to every one of our podcasts on Spotify. So I have to acknowledge Mark, say thank you for your loyalty, Mark. And, Mark's a great guy. Sometime we'll have to maybe even have him on, as a guest. So hello, Mark, and make sure you say hello to your beautiful wife, Metz, for us as well. Okay.
Very nice. Well, before you go off those shout outs, I've got a shout out as well. So good morning, Pyongyang, and good morning to the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. And thank you for the censorship that you've put onto our videos. Ed and I wear that as a funny badge of honor. So in the last couple of days, we've done a few videos about the DPRK and their hypersonic missile capability and a few other things that are happening on their military parade. And it turns out they didn't like me making fun of the communists, and they tried to censor some of the videos, but they're not very sophisticated, and I can get around all of that censorship, and it worked pretty well. But I wear that DPRK censorship as a badge of honor. So thanks very much for that, Kim Jong-un.
Yep. Amen. We got to start collecting those emails and those messages and make a little wall. That's the wall of honor. Yeah.
You only get 3 of them, right? If you're getting a strike. So it wasn't a strike; it was a copyright strike. So no strikes on the channel. I did get a strike from I think it might have been NIH or CDC or something once on a channel because I was mucking around and saying that something didn't happen, but it did happen, and saying that it was not real, but apparently it was real. But I don't go too close to that electric fence anymore. But the DPRK are never going to be able to do that. So whatever, you commie scumbag.
Well, but it does illustrate the point that we do often, we like to talk about the unspoken truth. So we invariably sometimes veer into territory that could get us censored. So we always try to be cognizant of that electric fence and where it is. So every day we're playing with danger, danger.
You're skirting around the edges of it, man.
Right. That's right.
All right, let's skirt around the edges because there's nothing to see here, and the economy is just fine. Tell us why I left this graphic from the other day, that the left are losing their minds because they think there is nothing to see here and the economy is fine. Why on earth are they saying that, man, when the reality couldn't be further from the truth?
Well, okay, so this is where spin plays a really big role. Now, Wall Street is a funny place, okay, and it's not a logical place. And the reason being, remember, the markets are made up of human beings, and human beings are emotional creatures. They are not rational. So that's why the markets are never going to be a rational place. You have to learn how to play the game if you're on Wall Street. Sometimes bad news is actually good news, and good news is bad news, depending on what Wall Street wants to hear. And then you have the whole gamesmanship going on, the insidious game that the authorities play with definitions.
I mean, is and is. Depends how you define is.
That's right. Thank you, Bill.
Depends how you define recession or AAA.
Well, they just changed the definition. No, we're not in a recession. Didn't you hear last week we changed the definition? No, so these are the games that they play. But you know what? They can get away with games like this for a certain period of time, but then at some point, the chickens come home with the roost, whatever phrase you want to use. A time does come when there is a price to pay, and usually, and the longer they put off the come to Jesus moment, the bigger, the more dramatic the consequences tend to be. We're in the period right now. History is rife with examples of the markets having huge, massive rallies right ahead of the really big sell-off. So I think we're in a period right now of denial, and we're in a period right now of the market. The market, by default, the market wants to go up, because most people don't know how to make money in a down market, right? They don't know about shorting, and they don't, and one of the dangerous things you can do is to short a trend, short an uptrend, right? Because you have no idea how far a rally is going to go. There are things that create, sometimes you get blow off rallies that are created for all sorts of reasons. Now, I could come up with a very believable scenario where the market is actually going up for wrong reasons. What I mean by that is if you have some very smart people who are short the bond market or short the stock market for very good reasons. Earnings are bad. Unemployment numbers are getting worse. Inflation numbers cannot be okay. They're legitimate reasons to be short. But then through a little bit of jerry-rigging, the market goes up. And then these shorts have to cover their shorts. And they create a short squeeze. So the buying that's going on is not actual true blood buying. It's shorts being forced to buy. So those people are buying not because they want to, but because they have to. So you have to kind of discern which rallies are real and which ones are fake. And now, if you're a trader, all you really care about is identifying the trend per se. Is that a tradable rally or not? You don't care about why it's going up. You just want to know that it's going up, that certain things are happening. But traders tend to be, a successful trader tends to be disciplined. He has a plan, and he just trades with what's in front of him. That is always the smartest thing to do, right? Trade the market you have in front of you. Remember, the market, as far as making money is concerned, the market is always right. Never argue with the market. Okay, if you get in the habit of arguing with the market, you're going to be humbled really, really fast. It's good to have an opinion. The market doesn't give a flying squirrel about your opinion. The market's going to do what it's going to do. And so we're getting into trading.
No, I like wading into this territory, because once you get on a roll, you kind of disclose everything that I have to pay $2,000 an hour to hear.
Yeah, right.
I appreciate that. Have you ever? Often you come out on this show with prophecies that seem to come true over and over again. Have you ever made prophecies and put big money on it and actually have it bite you in the ass? And
I did. Oh, that bit me in the ass? No, and I'll tell you why. Because I learned very early in my career, because I saw people around me. I actually survived as a stockbroker a lot longer than most of my contemporaries did. And there were reasons why I did, because I saw what they were doing wrong. And they tend to ignore obvious signs. And the most important thing you can do as a trader, as a stockbroker, as an investor, is you have a plan. And the first thing rule number one is never put yourself in a position to get killed by the market. That means you never stick your neck out where, if you are wrong, you're going to be booted out of the game.
So money management is really what
you're talking about. Simple money management, right? And that goes per trade, per week, per career. You always you set your stops here. Okay, if I'm wrong, because you could put on a trade for all the best reasons, all perfectly good reasons, and the trade still might not work. That's just the nature of trading. That's the nature of the stock market. So picking the right stock or the right commodity or the right product, whatever it is okay. It's useful, but it's not nearly as important as what your plan is. What's your plan? Very simple things, like keep your losses small, let your winners run. Everyone gets that one. This is why when I do teach people how to trade, my original 2-week course is now down to 90 minutes. I can teach someone how to trade in 90 minutes.
And these days, there's no requirement to even do that anymore.
That's right. With some of the programs that you and I talk to people about, you don't even have to do that. So, and people should look. Most people should not even be bothering to trade. Not when you have programs like the ones that we know about, where you're not going to
getting you like huge returns that you probably couldn't get by yourself anyway, other than sitting in front of a chart all day long. I just want to back up a little bit, and we're talking about the economy today. We're talking about nothing to see here, everything's fine, and you were saying that sometimes a day of reckoning comes for economies, and the day of reckoning comes for governments and the decision makers as well. And we've seen that a lot in the last couple of years. I noticed a day of reckoning came for the Western Australian government just yesterday. So we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast about how they created these Aboriginal laws where if you were going to dig 5 centimeters into the ground, then you had to go and get a consultant to say, no, you can't do that, or yes, you can do that. And they were going to charge you $160 an hour. So all sorts of negative implications happen in the economy where people couldn't build a fence. They couldn't clear the land to put more farming land on. They couldn't build a house. There's like 1,000 things that they couldn't do. And the stupidity of the government is that in their infinite wisdom, or their infinite stupidity, depends on what side of politics you're sitting on, they set up these laws, but then there was no one to actually go and do all the inspections. So everyone's like just sitting in limbo. But yesterday they reneged on it all. And the government woke up to themselves and realized that, hey, the premier that came out and actually implemented those rules and laws is no longer the premier of Western Australia. There's a new guy there, and the backlash has been so significant that he's recognised that this is actually pretty stupid, isn't it? And they abolished it and got rid of it. And so all the screaming and shouting, the jumping up and down, and all of the petitions and everybody coming together actually worked. The democratic process actually worked. And I was like, really heartened to hear a good news story for a while where sense and reason finally overcame. And, the person who was in charge there, the Premier of Western Australia, was not the person responsible for implementing those laws. He kind of got given what we would call here in Australia a hospital pass. It was passed to him, and then he got cleaned up by the opposition. And what can you do other than just allow these things to play out and see what happens? But now it's been reneged upon. I wonder what that means for other things going around. And as I scroll through some of my feeds and I see that good news story, I scroll on a little bit further in my Twitter feed and I see a picture of a Aboriginal woman who's literally 50 kilos overweight. And I'm not fat shaming anybody. I'm just saying what I'm seeing. She's 50 kilos overweight, and then the text associated with it says, where are we going to put all the nuclear waste from the new nuclear submarines we get? And I'm like, so the voice to Parliament is now wading into issues around defence and nuclear waste for submarines. But if you took the time to understand exactly how the Americans are going to give us the nuclear reactor that goes in the submarine, it's a completely sealed unit. And we can't touch it, we can't do anything, we can't pull it out because that technology is like super ultra secret squirrel top secret. And they're not giving us that. They're giving us the technology to use it, but we're not allowed to see how it actually works. But the voice to Parliament is now wading into a place where they're talking about nuclear submarines and nuclear waste from nuclear submarines. So I see on one side I see redemption and I see retraction happening in politics on one side. Then I see stupidity and idiocy happening on the other side. And if you confronted that woman and said, why on earth would that have anything to do with Aboriginal issues? She'd be like, what are you talking about? That affects us. That affects all of Australians. We're the voice to Parliament. We should say that. We should do all of these things. And then it kind of, if I could tie it back to the economy and look at what we're talking about today, the people on the left in the United States are thinking that the economy is okay. But we're seeing that CBDCs are set to roll out next year. And CBDCs and digital IDs, 24-25 timeline, where all countries in the world are supposed to be ready with their CBDC next year and the year after. And if that comes to pass, everything that we're talking about today, I think in some ways, Ed, is a little bit redundant because we're going to move to a new financial system and a new way of doing business that nobody understands, nobody really knows. And just for the everyday person with $50 in their wallet, they've got no idea what a central bank digital currency is, or what do I have to do with my phone? Why can't I go to the bank anymore? Why can't I spend my money on that? Like, imagine the absolute total chaos in society that this is going to cause, man.
Oh, damn straight. That's a good point, because there are a few issues, and namely CBDC and the digital IDs that makes all these other issues we talk about redundant. But we can't talk about CBDCs every single day. We do have to talk about we do talk about them a lot. And people can always scroll back on our site and watch them. And no doubt we're going to be talking about them a lot more. But you're right. There are a few issues that like govern all the other issues, right? And the CBDC being one of them. And now CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, for those of you who are hearing about it for the first time. A little fun fact about CBDCs is that only about 50% of the people even know what a CBDC is, that they never even heard of it. And of those 50%, only 16%, and this is from a survey that I did a report on once, only 16% of the people who do know about it actually approve of CBDCs. So when this program is going to roll out, as people learn about it, it is wildly unpopular. And that is why, because we talk an awful lot about, well, why doesn't anyone know about it? Why don't they extol the virtues of this on CBDC and on CNBC and on Fox News? Why aren't they, promoting this beautiful brand new system that's going to solve all? Because they know how unpopular it's going to be. So so they're going to have to be really creative about how they roll it out. That's why I think it's going to be rolled out, and it's going to be slow walked out, and it's going to be introduced with a lot of carrots and sticks along the way. And telling people, yeah, your dollar bills that you have in your wallet, those are going to be outlawed by December 1st of this year. That's kind of okay. Now you're talking revolution, okay, with that kind of cold water tactic. So I think they're going to.
Well, that's why that won't happen, right? But if people are listening to this or watching this and they're going, what a load of shit, as if they're going to do that. Don't forget, folks, in the early 1930s, the American government banned gold. Yeah. So you're not allowed to own gold. You had to hand it in. It was a criminal offense to have gold. And they were going to give it to you. Yeah. So I can't remember the exact numbers, but the amount that they were going to give to you per ounce was above the market value. And once they collected the gold and the amnesty had ended, they just jacked up the price of it to actually borrow against it until 1971, when Richard Nixon said, we've got to come off the gold standard because the government was actually insolvent and there was no way to borrow against any more of it. We'll float the currency so we can print as much as we want forever. It's like, and here we are. If you think of the history and you look back at it, we're in exactly the same place in history right now. We can't print any more money. We can't do anything else. We're going to have to move to a completely different system.
There you go. I mean, outlawing cash is not new. Now in America, we're one of the younger countries, in world history, a little over 200 years old, and we've already had currencies that have come and gone inside of our own borders. We used to have, during the Civil War, Revolutionary War, certain kinds of cash were issued, and they've since been outlawed. We've had, if someone pays you with $1,000 bill, which we used to have, you're not going to be able to cash it. No one's going to honor that $1,000 bill. There are currencies that are not legal tender anymore. They were once, and now they're not. So, and I know, in the UK now, they've got these really crappy half plastic, half paper kind of stuff that are really fragile and they fall apart, and right, in the Philippines they introduced a brand new note that's really fragile, and they don't honor it if it's folded, right? So
really,
yeah. So when it can't have a crease. Okay, so when you put it in your wallet, you got to make sure that when you take it out, I mean, here you take $1 bill, you can we crump it up, and but that particular bill, if it has a crease, if you take it and you fold it, most places will not honor it. So you have to keep it intact. It can't have rips in it, that kind of thing. So, and on top of which, fiat currencies are not real money. They're not.
It's worthless. Just a piece of paper or a piece of plastic. Yeah,
literally, worthless. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so. The digital IDs. Okay, so when you get those digital dollars, this is what I'm curious about, and I've got to do a big presentation on this topic, but I got to tell you, I'm having a hard time finding information on this, because one of my big questions is, well, how does this affect the Forex market? I
know there's like trillions of dollars that are trading there every day, and these are the like second, third, fourth, and 10th order effects that these idiots in charge don't understand. A lot of people don't really understand the history of why the Federal Reserve exists and the reason that they went to Jekyll Island in America and put all that together. The history of it is actually pretty interesting. I was watching a show I watch a show called The Curse of Oak Island. Have you ever seen that show?
The
That
Curse of Oak Island.
Yeah. So Oak Island is a place
Oh yeah,
in
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. I know. Yep. The place
so you know that
in
one? Yep.
off the coast of Maine, Nova Scotia, or something.
That's the one.
And
Yep.
it's rumored that the pirate
This
treasure was
treasure
buried.
and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a treasure hunting show, right? And so the extension of The Curse of Oak Island is beyond Oak Island is the next show. There's like 3 seasons of it. I only found it the other day because I really like
Yeah.
that show. I like the treasure hunting, right? They're looking for gold and they use all the tools and they find it. But one of the things that I was watching was about all the bank robbers and how they used to rob the trains and what they did and how that actually all happened. And it reminded me that a lot of the stories that they were talking about was just pre-1900 or in the early 1900s. And it was in 1908 that they got together at Jekyll Island to actually create the Federal Reserve. And it didn't come about till, I want to say 1914. I think that was the
13. Yeah.
13. Yep. So it took a couple of years to actually get there. And in the meantime, the Titanic sank with people who were opposing it. So not saying that that's the reason it sank, but maybe that was the reason it sank. So there's something to do with that conspiracy theory there, or it was just rotten luck, the same as the Malaysian Airlines plane that went away. There was a whole bunch of people on there as well, right? I don't know, coincidence,
Well,
the same.
there were also people on the Titanic who were planning the assassination of JFK. So
Yeah. The early days of the CIA, there it is. That's where it all came from. Yeah. But a lot of people don't realize that back in the day, there was like lots and lots of banks like there is today, but the system was very different. So I had my money in a bank account. I had $10,000 sitting in a bank account, and then I wanted to pay you, Ed. So what I did is I went and wrote a check. So you didn't bank with me. So I bank with bank A, you bank with bank B. You went to bank B to cash the check. And all it was an exchange of ledgers at the end of the day. But because there were so many banks and there were so many transactions, Bank B went back to Bank A and went, hey, Rob paid Ed, can you just fix the ledger to give me $1,000 and put that onto my ledger like this? And because it was all handwritten, there was no way for everything to be electronically reconciled, and you couldn't reconcile the documents between all of the banks in all of the given locations all at the same time. That's the reason that it actually came undone and fell apart. And so there was a whole bunch of people that were losing money. They put their money in the bank. And it kind of reminded me of the reason I thought of the Beyond Oak Island show was these bank robbers were going into these west towns in the west, right, on the frontier. And they would look at the bank and they were a posse, right? They come in with 10 of them and they'd ride into the town and they'd go to the bank and they'd kick in the door and go, right, open the vault. But all of the townspeople came out with their guns going, no, you don't. What are you doing? And they would fight back. And the reason they would fight back against these bank robbers is because there was no protection. The town's money was sitting in the vault there. Someone was responsible for it, and they're sitting in the vault. And if that money was gone, then it was gone forever. And that was what was happening with the banking system, is that because there's so many transactions going on, there's no way to reconcile documents electronically on a daily basis. The banking system continued to collapse. This bank went away. This bank went away. This kept collapsing. And all of these banks went away and everyone was losing their money. And so the powers that be got together to say, well, what if we created a reserve bank system where there was all of us together and we all worked together to stop that from happening anymore? And when you read the Creature from Jekyll Island, they're actually pretty conservative for the first few years. For the first few years, they don't do very much, but we find ourselves in the early 1920s when the Russian Revolution is actually happening. And some bankers from the United States go to Russia and go, if you get rid of the Tsar, we'll fund you. But we're communists. Doesn't matter. We'll fund you. The Russian Revolution and communism was funded by the Federal Reserve. Not a lot of people know that, but it's a well-documented fact. I think they gave him $1 million or something like that. It was a huge amount of money back in the day, right? And it all started from there. And here we are today. We have all of this fanciness with, these delicate systems that can reconcile everything electronically in the blink of an eye. And we can put trades on in a blink of a nanosecond. And if I can beat you to that trade and front run you in a nanosecond with that automated bot, I'm going to get ahead of you. I'm going to make more money than you. And we have all of this technology, all of this craziness, and still it's been buggered up. Still, it's not working. And that's because fiat systems never, ever work. They don't survive. And for all our innovation and our technology, we've had it on life support for a long time, but the money is just backed by thin air. It's backed by a promise. And it's no wonder Africa and Asia and China and Russia and all of the large economies of the world that are based on commodities are unbuckling themselves from us. The reason that they're unhooking themselves from us and they're disengaging with us is because your money is not worth a pinch of shit. It's not backed by anything. It's backed by a promise from the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve is not federal, and it's not a reserve. It's a consortium of private banks. And we're at the end here, Ed. We're at the end of it.
Yeah, well, we have talked many times about the history of fiat currency throughout the world, and we did a report taking us back to 1280.
Yeah, all the way back.
Yeah, and we should, and they took turns being the world's reserve currency, right? Yeah. You started out with we covered Greece, Rome, Ottoman Empire, British Empire, and currently
about 100 years each, right?
Yeah, about 100 years each. So we are at the tail end. I mean, if it's going to stick to schedule, we are long in the tooth as world reserve currency. But fiat currencies. This is an absolute fact. Every single fiat currency that has ever existed throughout history has failed. Not one has ever survived.
There's one really fun, interesting fact about the physical coins that you have in your wallet. And you might remember this story. When I tell you the story, you will remember it. But for the listeners and the viewers, you might not have heard this before. So you think of our governments today printing money. And I remember somebody asked Jerome Powell once, well, how are you going to print money? And Jerome Powell kind of looked at him from the lectern and he goes, well, we don't physically print it. It's just on a computer, man. Yep. And the reporter was like, oh, but you said you're going to print money. And he's like, no, we don't. Like, he was nice about it, right? He wasn't a jerk about it. He's like, no, this is how we do it.
That's just a generic term. We print,
Exactly right. But if you think of printing money, you think of the money in the printing press, right? That's what we've kind of been conditioned to see. Yep. But it's actually happened a lot in history. Yep. And when I watch Oak Island, or when I watch the Beyond Oak Island, whenever they find an artifact or a coin, that artifact or coin, a copper coin or a piece of silver or a gold, something like that, they're really small. They're like little itty bitty small. I don't know, maybe like your quarter or our 5-cent piece, like really tiny pieces of metal. But when you look at them closely, they're like always like just the way that it's made. Because it's made of real malleable material and it's soft. And so it's been in the ground and they're soft. Back in the day, the Romans introduced a thing to stop people from clipping coins. Remember that?
Yeah.
So the reason, if you look at any coin that you have around your house, in your wallet or in your purse or something like that, you'll see around the outside of the coin, it usually has a texture. Our 50-cent piece we have here in Australia is cut into a funny shape. It's like, I think it's got like 10 sides on it or something like that. And the reason that your coinage has the texture around the outside of it, or it's a funny shape, and it's printed with things on the other side, because back in the day, people were taking coins off other people and they were just shaving off just a little bit. And they'd take all of those shavings and they'd make it actually another coin. And it was a very similar size and very similar weight. And so that's the old school way of actually printing money. They're making this smaller and smaller. You can't actually discern the difference when you're feeling it. It's only a gram or two different in that, and they were putting it all together. The gold coins there, you've got on your desk, Ed, do they have a texture around the outside of them, stopping you from clipping them?
Oh, yeah. And the gold, sure,
that prevents somebody from actually doing that, right?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
It's interesting.
Probably can't see it. It costs the U.S. Mint, when they do actually print a currency, it costs us 17 cents to produce a paper bill.
Well, it shows it's just not worth anything, whether it's $100 or $50.
Right. Now, whether that's a $100 denomination or a $1 denomination, it costs 17 cents to produce that piece of paper, right? And of course, the scam here, if we did what the United States of America, what our government does, we would be put in jail. Right? So we could spend 17 cents for a $100 bill, and then we can use that $100 bill to go buy $100 worth of wheat or whatever from a foreign country. Yeah, so out of thin air, we produce a bill worth 17, it costs us 17 cents to make that bill, and we use that to buy $100 worth of, and another thing, you might not know this, but guess what? The Federal Reserve has been buying they've been printing money like crazy, and they've been buying this stuff.
Gold. Yeah, it's insane, isn't it? It's insane.
It's
the ultimate irony.
It's the ultimate con game. It's ultimate scam. It's criminal. I mean, again, if you and I, okay, so if I wrote a little, IOU in the back of this, this is worth, $2,000, and I took this into my coin dealer and asked him, hey, okay.
Get out of here, you moron. Get out. Yeah.
I'll give you this for, but that's what our government does. And the money printing since the worldwide flu. Listen, we were downgraded by Fitch. Our bond market was downgraded by Fitch the other day. And Janet Yellen was having her panties were in a twist. Saying, well, how dare they don't understand how sophisticated our financial structure is. So they really should not be.
It's terrible. It's terrible to think that people are so stupid. It's a complicated subject, but it's not that complicated.
Well, it isn't. It isn't. I mean, they use a lot of smoke and mirrors to confuse us and give us, and so people give up. And this is too complicated. I'm not gonna. Okay, you know what you're talking about. I'll just do whatever you say because you obviously know this stuff and I don't. So they go along with, and that's why you and I try to simplify things for people. These complicated situations is really not. It's not that complicated when you sit back and look at the bigger principles involved. As long as you understand the bigger principles involved, you can get everything else as noise, right?
The underlying principle is you can't print money out of thin air and then say it's a promise to actually give it back to you. It doesn't work. Well, Ed, you've got a report here for us today. Before I throw to that report, I want to remind people that this is about Bidenomics and Joe Biden and how he behaves and what's going on. So we've got a quick message from Joe Biden before we begin. So let's have a little look at that.
I like my coffee dark.
That was for the Republicans in the audience, just to see if everybody was paying attention and listening. So let's throw to Ed's report and have a look.
Okay, so today we got more evidence that our government is lying to us about the state of the economy and people's abilities to make a living. So I want to talk to you about that and give you some solutions if you're one of those people who are struggling. So let's get right to it. Okay, so if you listen to the government, everything's fine. There's nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. There's no real inflation, and we're not in a recession. Well, these people obviously do not do their own grocery shopping. They do not put gas in their car. These are elitists who have no clue what the day-to-day life is like for most Americans. So let's talk about an article today that's out of Zero Hedge. Number of Americans able to afford $400 surprise bill slides in era of Bidenomics. As inflation and economic uncertainty crush American households, only 46% of adults have emergency savings to cover $400 in expenses in the third quarter. That is 2 percentage points lower than survey results from the second quarter. As it appears, the financial well-being of consumers is deteriorating. The share of U.S. adults who said they would cover a $400 emergency expenses with cash or equivalents dropped by 2 percentage points from the previous quarter to 46%. A majority of the 11,000 adults surveyed said they would either need to depend on debt or be unable to cover an emergency expense. 35% of respondents said that they would need to use at least some debt. That is steady from the previous quarter, while an increasing share, 19%, said they would not be able to pay it at all. And here they give some more details from the survey, but let's scroll down a little bit. The reality is, a $400 emergency expense for the working poor is nearly impossible to pay, while borrowing rates are at 2-decade highs. Meanwhile, high earners were more than twice as likely as low-income folks to pay the emergency expense with cash or cash equivalents. And here they break it down. So in this article, obviously what they're referring to is the number of people who can manage to pay a $400 emergency expense with cash or cash equivalents. And they're saying that here that the number of people who can manage to pay for an emergency with cash on hand continues to decline. Listen, if you're one of those people who are worried about being able to handle an emergency expense, or, if you're just worried, if you're stressing out about being able to handle your day-to-day expenses, you need to find ways to establish other streams of income, right? And Rob and I talk incessantly about the need for establishing streams of passive recurring income. And we have 3 or 4 programs that we could introduce you to immediately to help you start making money online. Now, these are programs that you could do without having to quit your other job. So make the decision to get started today. Reach out to either Rob or me, and let's get you set up. Ed Anderson, live from Minnesota, signing out.
Well done. Good report, and very, very, very important points there, man. It's just unbelievable what's happening in the economy. Why do you think that the left and the leftist media say that there's nothing to see here, but the reality is very, very different on the ground? Why do you think that's happening?
Well, because they want to stay in power. Biden's going to be running for re-election here.
But that will backfire on them, because I saw an example of that this morning as well. So I was scrolling through one of my social feeds, I can't remember which one, and there was a guy saying, I just got a power bill for the last 2 months of my gas. He lives in Victoria, and it was $748. And he said, I barely use the heater. I only use it when I'm about to freeze, because the blanket I have on my lap and the 4 layers of clothes are not quite enough. I have to turn the heater on. And he said, how can I possibly sustain that? I'm a single guy that lives in a 1-bedroom unit, and it's $748 for 2 months worth of gas usage, which he hardly ever uses. And imagine in Victoria, and it's cold there, but then you think, imagine if you were heating a house with like 3 or 4 kids, or having a large family or something like that. The kids can't run around with 9 layers of clothes inside. Like, you have to heat the house. You've just got no choice. But the government says, everything's fine, the economy is going good, inflation is coming down, it's good. But my power bill's gone up literally by 35%. And there was a news report yesterday saying that power bills are expected to go up another 30% in the new year. And I'm scratching my head going, that means they've gone up like 60% in the last 12 to 18 months. How do normal families sustain that? I live in a place where it's not cold, so it's not really a big deal. And when it's hot, I just open the door. I don't need it. I just don't really need air conditioning. I'm okay. I don't need it. But for the people that do, and I recognize that 80 to 90% of people do need that, it is like a massive impact. But then the government's saying everything's okay. They're fucking going to be gone, man. There's no way that's okay. No, people are smarter than that.
Well, okay. If we had a Republican in office right now, this would be a nonstop story about inflation and how difficult it is. The truth of the matter is that mainstream media is in the tank for liberals. So so they're always going to. But for those people who do want to look a little bit, finding stories on the internet of people demonstrating their year-over-year increase in living expenses they're ubiquitous. They're all over the place. Okay, there are tons. As a matter of fact, I've been thinking about doing a video on that topic, coming up with a collage of people going on talking about their personal increase in living expenses, detailing it, and so that's why I said in my report, these people, the elite, trying to deliver this message, they either know they're lying, they either know, or they just don't care, or they don't have any clue. They don't do the actual grocery shopping. They don't fill up their gas tank. They're living in some kind of weird bubble that no one else lives in. It's not hypocrisy isn't the right word. The pure. I'm trying to think of the right word. These people are conning us. This is a con game, and they think that
they're gaslighting you is the way to describe it properly.
Gaslighting, yeah. And they think we're stupid. I guess because it all depends.
But that's what I'm saying, Ed. Like they're gaslighting us, and they're using this rhetoric, and they're changing language and saying that everything's okay. There's nothing to see here. But the reality in my wallet is very different. The reality in my bank account is completely different. And I'm like, you're full of shit. And next time I get a chance, you are gone.
Well, in politics, there used to be accountability, right? when Ronald Reagan first ran for president, his first time, the first time he was successful when he ran, he coined a phrase that is the popular benchmark now in politics. Ask yourself, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Right? That's supposed to be the standard. So you should look at the guy in office and is my life better than it was 4 years ago? Now with Trump, by every economic measure, we were so much better off than under Obama, than 4 years earlier. That there's no yet people voted their ideology, and somehow Joe Biden, who ran his campaign from his basement, managed to get the most number of votes ever in human history, even more than Barack Obama. I mean, come on, guys, come on, So
Careful, you're going near the fence here.
Yeah, I know. I'll back off a little bit. Okay, so but I do think that because our country is so tribal, that people are willing to willing to vote against their own self-interest, which is, I guess, it just shows the power of I don't know what the power of propaganda, the power of
gaslighting.
Yeah, because people's lives were demonstrably better economically at the at the end of Trump's first
term.
And but the machine was out against him, and the machine they threw everything, all the propaganda they threw at this guy for 4 years, really 6 years when you think about it. It was just off the charts, and now we're seeing it again. And now, and now it's so disgraceful. Now they have no shame. These people. There is no more. There's no semblance. They're not even trying to show any kind of dignity or self-restraint in the political party. They're all in. That's because these liberals, they got an agenda to achieve, and this agenda is being passed down to them by higher powers out of Switzerland, who are setting the real agenda worldwide. That's why more and more governments around the world right now are liberal governments, because they are backed by a lot of money out there. BlackRock, boy, talking about BlackRock. Did you know, by the way, I know I'm going down a little tangent here, but I just have to say that, worldwide, they've done, they did an analysis every 4 years. They do an analysis of a country's assets. How much is the country worth, primarily based on their natural resources. Ukraine came in number 4 in assessed intrinsic natural resource values. It comes in at $15 trillion of resources that
resources like food mostly,
like wheat and natural resources, wheat, right. Coal, I think, fertilizer. I know they're big on fertilizer, right. and so BlackRock, they're whispering in these guys' ears. Now, if BlackRock were a country, they would be the 3rd largest country in the world in terms of GDP, right behind the U.S. and China. BlackRock would be, if it were a country, it would be number 3.
That's squarely in number 3.
BlackRock has over $11 trillion under management. So it gives you, and so that's why the stuff going on in Ukraine. BlackRock's whispering in Biden's ears. He said, "Hey man, everything else is small ball. Your kid is corrupt. So throw him under the bus. Who cares? We got bigger fish to fry. We got bigger things to do. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there. I should probably do a report on that pretty soon and get people actual hard numbers. But numbers I told you are real. They're the real numbers. But I'll explain it more thoroughly. But anyway.
Well, it goes to the heart of the whole premise of this podcast is that, are you better off? And the Bidenomics that have happened in the last 2 years have systematically destroyed your economy. You've got that AAA credit rating, for heaven's sake, being downgraded to the AA. The stock market is worse off. The border is open. There's massive unemployment and huge inflation. And there's literally been hundreds of billions of dollars given in foreign aid to no avail. You would think that with all of the US military might and power and prowess and leadership and everything that the US stands for militarily, you'd think that handing off all of that gear would have actually won this war pretty quickly. but it just shows that it's not true, and it shows that the mistakes that have been made are continuing to be made, and this is only the war in Europe is only escalating, and it's accelerating the death of the fiat currency, and it's accelerating the death of the American economy as well. My concern is that the Democrats in the US are going to be cheating. You know, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. That's what they're going to be doing for the next election. They're already cheating. They're already doing that now. They're positioning everything, and the Republicans are trying to play by the rules and play ball, but it's not going to work, and they're not going to win. And you're going to have another 4 years of Biden, which means the end of life as you know it. And we're staring down the pike at it. It's like 18 months away. Like, what? Really? The end of civilization as you know it could be 18 months away. Because if he gets back in, that's the end. That really is the end. And if Kamala Harris is his number 2 again, imagine if Joe Biden dies or he has to go away because he's no longer physically able to do it because he's old, then that really is she is a sock puppet.
That's a good point. Actually, I do not think Biden will. I think he'll be off the ticket by the end of this year.
Gavin Newsom?
No, Biden. Biden will be off the ticket.
No. Do you think Gavin Newsom is going to replace him?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be Newsom. Yep.
Yeah.
Probably.
There's no one really else there that they'll put on the ticket, right? They're not going to put RFK on the ticket, for heaven's sake.
That's right. I mean, he's
going to get rid of them all.
The ticket I would like to see is Trump and RFK. That's what I'd like to see.
There's a dark horse there that we haven't talked about for a little while is Tulsi Gabbard. I saw someone asked her, you know, why don't you run? What are you doing? She's like, she kind of opened the door to it a little bit. Not saying she was or she wasn't, but, you know, it's still a long time to go. It's like you don't want to throw your hat in the ring too early. Otherwise, you end up like Ron DeSantis and have a terrible marketing team around you. That's no good. You got to hitch your wagon to the right horse, so to speak. And she's sort of playing all sides of that coin. But she's certainly not going to be in a Democrat party at all because she left them.
The Republicans have a pretty deep bench. They got some really talented people to choose between. Christy Noem out in North Dakota. I'm a big fan of hers.
Vivek as well. He's pretty good.
Yeah, Vivek. Yeah. So now the only issue with those people, as talented as they are, they don't have the name recognition, right? It's going to take a long time to introduce yourself to the country. You know, with Trump, everyone knows. You know, Trump, in my opinion, is pretty much Teflon. So much has been thrown at him at this point that the people who are loyal to Trump now, there's no way you're going to shake them loose. There's no way, because after everything that's been thrown at him by now, the people who are with him now, they're not going to go away. So he's been tested that way, right?
Well, you know, I let me push back here a little bit because it makes sense that you say that, and all of that is all true. But how on earth did Dr. Oz lose to John Fetterman? How was that possible?
Yeah,
And poor old John Fetterman, man, the guy had a stroke. He doesn't know his ass from his elbow, and he's put into that. Oh man.
Yeah. No. Okay, 2 reasons. For the same reason that Trump magically lost to Biden. One is there was shenanigans going on. There was. I firmly believe that votes were stolen. And
well, that's why I say, like, it doesn't matter the optics of it, right? The optics are Dr. Oz was the candidate that was way better than him. You know, he's smart, he's successful, he's articulate, he wants what's best, he does all of those things. And John Fetterman is these far leftist policies, and he can't even remember. He came on stage and he said, "Hello, everyone. Good night."
Yeah.
He couldn't even do his introduction. He couldn't even do his greeting correctly, but he won. What?
And the point it proved is it doesn't matter who the candidate is anymore.
Which sock puppet it is.
Yeah, that's right. The machine is in charge of everything. Yeah. It doesn't. Joe Biden is not the president of the United States. He's not making decisions.
Apparently, he's off. I saw some video of him. He's getting in the helicopter back to Delaware after he's been on the beach all week. So he's been on the beach all week, and now he's going back home for the weekend. And apparently, he's had 365 days off that he hasn't worked. You know, I don't know if it's true or not, but far out, man.
That's fine by me. I wish you would take all the days off. Just.
But that's the reason that's just such a shit fight, man. Just because he's not there.
And listen, and this is why right now. I mean, Congress is out for the year now, right? Which great. I love it when Congress is not in session, when they're not around.
Thank God we don't have to listen to it anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, they can't pass any more damaging stuff, for a while.
Yeah, can't destroy the country anymore.
Yeah. Not that I don't know how much it matters, because remember, we have all these three-letter agencies out there that are destroying our country for us anyway. They make up the rules that we all live by day to day.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with what you see in that dog and pony show in Congress or the Senate or something like that. It's funny. Yeah. Well, let's round it out. I'll as we do each day, I'll go first with some closing remarks and then give you an opportunity to think of some as I'm talking there. I just want to remind everybody that nobody's coming to save you. No president of the United States, whomever that is going to actually help you. Nobody in government is helping you. The government is not there to help you. The government is there to extract as much money as possible from you because you're a slave to the matrix and you're a slave to the machine. So whatever you do, don't look to politicians or look at politics as your savior. Ed and I look at politics and we look at these things on a daily basis because it's a bit of entertainment for us. We're a bit sadistic when it comes to those sorts of things, but it's actually a bit of a clown show how hopeless these people are. But at the same time, it's not funny either because it's diabolical in the way that they're actually destroying our economy and systematically destroying our way of life and taking away what was once good. If I could have a time machine, if you ask that question, if you had a time machine and you could go back anywhere, where would you go? I'd go back to 2015. I'd just go back like half a dozen years ago because life was pretty good back then. Everyone was really prosperous. The world was in a much better place. We had different leadership. Life was just better than what it was. But unfortunately, we're never going back to that. And my view is that there's really dark clouds on the horizon and there's really bad things that are happening in all of our societies. And it's gone so far for me that I think that I want to get out of here and never, ever, ever come back. And just like the discourse that I see in society and the division that I see in society and the conversations that I have with people just make me shake my head and think, the Chinese enemy are winning. They've inserted unrestricted warfare into everybody's mobile phone and social media, and everybody is zombified by social media, and the end and the destruction of our society continues on a daily basis, particularly from the federal Labor government, who is systematically destroying the energy output of Australia. Do you want to be here when there's rolling blackouts and rolling brownouts? There was footage yesterday. It was windy as anything. It was so windy. The trees going like this. And then the guy pans his camera around and there's like about 50 wind turbines completely still. And the wind is blowing. That doesn't generate electricity when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing. But the wind was howling. He's blowing a gale. And he's like panning his camera. It's not fake. It's real. He's like, look, it's so windy here. And takes his hand off the microphone. And it's like, with the wind on his microphone. Pans around. The turbines are standing still, and then he looks at the trees, and they're like nearly falling over on the ground. It's like, but this is systematically being destroyed. And if I take this to its nth in 20 years' time, so Chris Bowen would have us have all of the coal fire and the gas gone away, and we're operating on wind and solar for the next 10 years. But in 10 years' time after that, we have to replace it all. But where's it coming from? Where are we getting it from? They're systematically destroying the very fabric of Australian society. And I feel like I have to do something now before you get caught up in all of that. If I go and buy a house here in Australia and I'm stuck with a mortgage for the next 20 years and I have to pay that mortgage off and I've got to do, and then the cost of living goes up, I just think, what are my choices? Where could I go? Where could I go in the world where I didn't have to deal with these fuckwits? Where could I go? And the natural place is, I think, maybe somewhere like Dubai. Maybe there's some places in Asia I could go to. Maybe I could go to Alaska. At least I could own a gun there in Alaska. At least I could live an outdoors lifestyle. There's not that many people there, and so many other alternatives. And I once thought Australia was the lucky country, but it's not. It's not. We're lucky people. We've got a wallet full of money and a fridge full of food, but the reality is we're governed by fucking morons who are destroying the place. And I don't want to sound like an old, cynical man, but that's the truth of it. That's the reality of it. And just the discourse and division that I see on a daily basis, man, there's got to be better places in the world than this fucking shithole.
I love it. When you think about how the coldest day in Sydney history was in 1932, and it was, what did it work out to? Like 2 degrees above,
2 degrees Celsius, not even freezing, not even cold enough to snow.
Not freezing. Moving to Alaska as your solution.
I see all those Alaskan shows and I'm like, man,
I
that'd be
know.
so good. That'd be so good. And my missus is like, listen, man, you know what? I'll acclimatize. It'll be fine. I'll get there and complain just as hard up there because I'll take myself with me when I go.
But I like your instincts. So the idea of being, the rugged self-individualism, right? You just want a few good books, a few good sets of tools, a nice roof over your head, maybe, and you're pretty good. And
I just want to be left alone.
And you want to be left alone. Now, if you happen to have a sweetheart, that's
perfect.
That's extra. That's a bonus. But I like that idea too. But when you think about, so where in the world? I mean, but if you're in Alaska, you're still in America, man. And America, the nanny state is coming for every corner of the country as well, right?
Mountain wilderness or not, they're coming for you.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about places, I end up in Eastern Europe.
Poland, conservative family values.
Yep.
Yeah. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, those sorts of places.
Yep.
They're poor places though. They don't have much.
Ukraine, Russia.
Yeah, dare I say it. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying. Well, you don't have any freedom in Russia. Well, let me ask you how much freedom you have here in America these days.
Exactly.
If you want to play that game, and as soon as they start instituting these fucking digital IDs and CBDCs, there's not going to be any semblance of freedom anymore.
And that's what I mean. That's what I mean by I just want to go and be left alone.
Yeah.
But I can't be left alone. I want to be left alone and not have to tap my mobile phone on something to eat. Like if I wanted to pay with cash, then I should be able to. There's a video going around on Twitter. This old guy in England, he must be in his like 70s. He's a pretty older dude. And he's putting the money on the counter like coins. He's like, there's the exact money. It's £1 and something, 30 pence or whatever for these strawberries. That's what it said. That's what it is. And the lady behind the counter says, we can't take that. We can't take that. And he goes, that's legal tender. You'll take it. You have to take it. By law, you have to take it. No, we don't. You can't. And he just walks out of the shop and eats the strawberries. But that's what I mean. Like a 70-year-old man just wants to be left alone. He just wants to go and buy a punnet of strawberries, and that's the joy that he gets in his morning because they're so delicious. But I just think government wants to control every aspect of your life, to how you spend your money, to how you cook your food. It's like, piss off, man. Leave us alone. Like, stop it.
And you're right about, and this is what the next election is about, because every year is a big deal now. We are so close to so many of these programs being implemented that it won't take them very long to get these guys in place. They get the Fed Now program ensconced in everyday activity, CBDCs ensconced. They want everyone's health records on the digital IDs. They want to digitize everything. They want those CBDCs. They want to outlaw cash. They got to get that done before any kind of conservative gets into office. They have to get that done. They have to give us so much dependent on this new system that's going to be almost impossible to reverse, to unwind, right? And that's what they're trying to get us to. So you're right. That's why this next election is so important. So listen, you have to reduce your exposure to your bank, my friends. The banks are going to continue. You're going to see another round of bank failures here in a month or two. As we get into the fall, you're going to see another, and there's a reason for that. I won't spend time on it here, but there's a reason via the calendar why that's going to happen. So you're going to see more bank failures, and you're going to see. Get your money. And FDIC is not going to be there to bail you out. I promise you. So get your money out of the freaking bank. Keep whatever you need in there for paying bills. Yeah. But get the rest out of the goddamn bank. And then you take a bunch of that cash and put it into freaking gold and silver, because gold and silver is the only actual money in the world. The cash, the fiat currencies, they are literally pieces of paper that are garbage. And with inflation, they're losing buying power. They're losing value every single day that you have your money in the bank. And remember, any money that you do sitting in the bank, remember, it's not legally your money. Okay, it's not yours. So they don't have to give it back to you. You're loaning the money.
You're last in line.
You're last in line. So get that money in the bank, put it into fucking gold and silver, and then establish streams of passive recurring income. Get those extra, and then as you're making that extra income, pay whatever little bills you need to pay, and then put a bunch of that into gold and silver as well, or use it to generate more passive recurring income. And Rob and I can help you with that. So give us a call. We'll get you squared away.
Beautifully said, and a nice way to close it out and round it out. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, we're available as a podcast. Head on over to Spotify, to Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to come on over to the Telegram channel. All the links are going to be right there in the description. Good week, Ed. So much for only doing a couple a week. We did one every day and the live as well. So thanks very much for your effort and your support this week. I really love doing this with you, man. It's the ideal way to start my day, and I really enjoy your friendship and everything you do for the Unspoken Truth channel here. So thanks so much, man.
Well, thank you, Rob, and thank you for the kind words. I right back at you, man. I feel the same way. It's I really enjoyed this. There's no one in the world I would rather do this with than you. So yeah, so thanks for allowing me on your show.
Fantastic. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. It's bye for now.